You know, when the president appeared in the Rose Garden with Bo Bergdahl's parents, Bob and Janny, to tell the nation that their son was released, it was seen as a humanitarian success. But it also caused, we're told, some consternation in the Pentagon. According to retired four-star General Jack Keane, senior military leaders are, quote, outraged over the president's touting the prisoner exchange as a diplomatic triumph in that photo op appearance, especially given the questions about whether Bergdahl deserted or was snatched by the Taliban when he apparently just walked away, and about what he may have done while in captivity. General Keane, a Fox News military analyst, joins us now. General Keane, good morning. You know, we all understand that we leave no one behind, but was this the way to do it?
Well, certainly I don't have any problem with trying to get Sergeant Bergdahl out of captivity. That's for certain. I do have a problem with the conditions of the swap. I mean, let's face it, I mean, it's not an open-ended contract. If we wanted to make a deal for Bergdahl and the Taliban were asking for every single detainee we had at Gitmo, all 149, I doubt if we'd made that deal. If they were asking for just one detainee, and that is Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the mastermind of 9/11, I doubt if we'd make that deal. So it's not that we'll take any deal that is being offered. The fact is we did accept this one, but we should have had tougher conditions on it in terms of house arrest, restriction for 2 years, no internet, no phone, and international monitors, and maybe putting them not in a compound that we've seen on TV, but in a military base that the Qataris are running. That would have been far better outcome, I think, in terms of the swap.
You know, and they say that the conditions changed, but Leon Panetta, Secretary of Defense, was against this, he says, for years. What do you think made Chuck Hagel change his mind and actually go with this?
I don't know. I can only speculate, and that's always dangerous, but I do think that given the president's announcement that we were not going to leave any residual force in Afghanistan post-2016, in his mind, he's walking away from that war, and I think he probably looks at this as part of that. Whether that's tied to a larger strategy dealing with Gitmo itself, I just don't know.
And in terms of that announcement, when it came with the president and with the Bergdahls together, what are you hearing from your colleagues and former colleagues in the Pentagon?
Well, I think they have done such good work in working with the parents to make certain that they kept a low profile, that they were not publicly promoting their son's release, because the enemy uses that information against him, and they certainly abided by all of that. And then this Rose Garden promotion event, I call it, happened, and as a result of that, a firestorm was created around Sergeant Bergdahl himself, and that his teammates responded to it, understandably. Parents or loved ones of soldiers who may, in fact, have been killed in trying to find him or rescue him were certainly justified in their emotional response in dealing with all of this. And a lot of that could have been avoided. What the military is trying to do is Sergeant Bergdahl goes through a decompression phase. His mental and physical health are of the utmost concern, and then he'll begin reintegration. And as a part of that reintegration, we will debrief him rather significantly in terms of what he has learned about this enemy that will be of value to us. And then with an experienced interrogator, we will discover everything, I think, that has happened to Sergeant Bergdahl in terms of his motivation for leaving his post and what happened to him in captivity. These are people who understand how to deal with somebody who's likely carrying some guilt with him, and also will be able to earn that person's trust and get the information that we need. And then we'll know, with other information that we have, whether charges should be rendered against Sergeant Bergdahl, and that's in the hands of the United States Army. And I'm convinced they'll go about that in the studious fashion and will make the right call.
Do you think he should be court-martialed, as some are calling?
Well, the facts have got to take you to that. I mean, if we want to speculate that obviously he left his post, and that is a punishable offense. What was the motivation for that? Are there any extenuating circumstances? It's hard for me in my own mind to find any extenuating or motivating or mitigating circumstances that would justify leaving your post and therefore letting your teammates down in the entire code of conduct that we have that governs our soldiers' behavior. So I think it's likely that the military will come forward for that. Whether there are other issues they have to deal with in terms of his behavior in captivity, that remains to be seen. They obviously have a lot of information about that, some of it only single source, not confirmed, but most of the accurate information they'll get about his captivity, I'm absolutely convinced, will come from Sergeant Bergdahl himself, and with an experienced interrogator and his willingness to tell people what happened and to be truthful about it.
All right, General Jack Keane, we thank you for your insight today.
All right, you take care.
Right.
On that same note, the release of those Taliban leaders is reigniting the debate today over the future of Guantanamo Bay. President Obama has been vowing to close the prison ever since he took office. But this swap to free Bo Bergdahl has become so controversial that many feel it could put more roadblocks in the way of that goal. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge has spent a lot of time there, and she is live in Washington with more on this. So instead of paving the way here, it looks like it could have done just the opposite, Catherine.
Well, that's right, Martha. Observers who have been following the swap of the Taliban 5 say that it may have had the opposite effect, that in the end it damaged any remaining goodwill on Capitol Hill to close the camps, and in the short term made transfers even more difficult.
The political reality here is that this is the poster child of unintended consequences. Now, it has had the exact opposite effect, that it's making it harder for them, I think, at least in the short term, to do transfers.
The whole idea of this 30-day notification is that Republicans and Democrats on Capitol Hill wanted to have a check on the executive branch so that if the president made a decision to transfer people out of the camps, they would have 30 days to make sure that was a decision that was politically sustainable, not just for Republicans, but also for Democrats. And as we've seen in the last week, this decision has angered people on both sides of the political aisle, Martha.
Yeah. Interesting point. So, you know, when you look at who's left of the 140-some prisoners that are still there, have we removed the 5 worst from the group, or are the remaining people there a bigger problem in some ways?
Well, there's some detainees, based on our experience down there, which are even more problematic, but probably the biggest thorn in the side of the administration are the Yemeni detainees. They make up about 90 of the remaining population there. And this is a difficult group because when they go back to the region, or Saudis in effect go back to the region, they point to the case of Saeed al-Shari. This is a guy who was at Guantanamo Bay. He left, he went back to what amounted to the Betty Ford rehab program for terrorists in Saudi Arabia, and then in fairly short order made a beeline for al-Qaeda in Yemen, which is the most active of the al-Qaeda affiliates, and he got himself into the #2 position. So when you look at the biggest obstacle to closing Gitmo, it remains about these 90 detainees and what to do with them, whether it really is feasible to send them back to Yemen or these rehab camps in Saudi Arabia.
Catherine, thank you very much.
You're welcome.